I thought I'd do a regular 2D video of the bamboo bowl. I had shot a whole bunch of footage of making it, so it didn't seem too hard to put a video together for it. I had started by doing a drawing for the segments just to figure out the widths and the lengths for the segments. This helps because you need to know the length of each segment because that determines the size of the rings for the bowl. So if you're going to make rings that stack up to form the shape of the bowl, you need to make the rings the size that you need. I started by cutting out the strips out of the bamboo plywood, and then I set up my sled to cut the segments. It's really simple. I just screwed a fence down to the bed of the sled at 15 degrees. Then I could clamp a stop to that fence, which would give me the lengths that I need. Then the biggest problem is keeping track of the different sets of segments. So I just have to make sure I'm stacking them and keeping each ring of segments together as a set. And with this fence on the sled, I've got it now where the rings work out all the way around so that I don't get a gap in the seams between the segments. And I could start laying out the segments. I've been using hose clamps more and more to put the rings together. This time I tried putting multiple hose clamps together to form a ring, which worked really well. And I could put all my rings together. I didn't really have enough hose clamps to do all the rings at once, so I would do a few and then let them set up. Then it was time to take the hose clamps off. And this was the moment of truth to see if the rings actually formed a bowl without any gaps in the set of rings. And it worked. Then for the very bottom piece, it's really hard to get all of the segments to come together. So it's easier to just drill out the center and then make a plug to fit in that hole. I got a scrap piece of the bamboo plywood and turned a little plug to go in that hole. And after a bunch of testing, it fit. And I can cut that piece shorter and then glue that plug into place. Now that all the rings are dry, I can sand the two faces of each ring. The rings have to stack together without any gap in between the rings. Now in this bowl, I glued up the rings in pairs, so I just have one seam to worry about at a time. And then once the pairs were glued up, I could glue the pairs together and sort of work my way up to the complete bowl. For the very bottom piece, I cut a scrap piece of 2x4 that's the height of the bowl, and then I can use that to clamp a longer piece of wood across the bowl and hold the bottom in place. The little scrap piece of wood is basically there just to help hold the clamp so that I don't have to clamp two clamps at the same time, which would be really difficult. And the first thing to do on the lathe is to form a tenon on the bottom of the bowl that I can use with the chuck to hold the bowl in place as I turn it. And I can turn the outside, get it round. This will help it turn smoother on the lathe. The bowl is end grain and side grain in stripes. So as I go along the surface, it would go from end grain, kind of really fine chips, to then longer side grain chips. So it was sort of interesting to turn. But the bamboo turns pretty well for being dry and for being mostly all end grain. I think the wood is dense enough that you don't get very much tear out or sort of stripping of the green from the cutting from the tools. And then it was a super nice day, so I opened the big door behind the lathe and I could do the sanding. And I turned the bowl back around and I could turn the tenon off the bottom now. And I turned a little bit of a cavity in the bottom so that I could use that with the chuck to hold the bowl back on the lathe again with the bottom finished. But this definitely isn't holding it as well as it was holding it before. But it's holding it well enough that I can put the finish on the bowl on the lathe, which is much easier than trying to put it on when it's not being held on the lathe. and it turned out really nice. I would like to do some more variations with this bamboo plywood. It's been commented, and I think it's really true that it looks like books on shelves, which I like a lot. Thanks for watching.